My wife called my dinner poverty and threw it on the floor after I paid rent again. That night, I left quietly and started planning my divorce. After covering the rent with my emergency fund because my wife failed to pay it again, I returned home with a gas station meal and a headache. She glanced at the food and exclaimed, "Wow, you really know how to make poverty taste worse." Then she threw it out, saying, "Try again tomorrow, idiot." That night, I understood I wasn't a spouse, but rather a wallet with a pulse. She called me this morning, crying and begging. You know the type. The miserable sacks who let themselves be walked over till they crack. But here I am, sitting in my car in a 24-hour grocery store parking lot, because I can't bear returning to my own house tonight. It's funny how quickly your life can turn into a Reddit post. It started with the rent again. Skylar missed paying it for the third time in 6 months, despite the fact that she does not work and has only one financial responsibility: transferring money from our joint account to the landlord's payment system, which takes around 90 seconds. My landlord notified me of the late fee by text message this morning. $65 went down the drain, just like the $130 from the prior two forgets. We can't afford to waste money right now. But regardless, I am used to it. I called Skylar from where I was already working a 12-hour shift because we're understaffed, which is corporate speak for, we don't want to hire enough people. She gave me the usual spiel about how she got distracted, how the payment portal is extremely confusing, and how she simply has too much on her plate right now. She has been unemployed for 14 months. Her plate has TikTok and our Netflix subscription. So I transferred the rent money from my emergency fund. Again. The emergency fund, which had nearly $8,000 in it 2 years ago, currently has a whopping $712, because my wife's failure to remember fundamental adult obligations appears to be our most regular problem. Fast forward to me driving home from my shift. My head is pounding as if someone is using my skull for drum practice. I am fatigued. I haven't eaten since my dismal desk lunch at 11 o'clock. So I swing by the gas station near our apartment and get some pre-made sandwiches, chips, and 2 bottles of Pepsi. It's not gourmet, but it will do. I come in the door to find Skylar on the couch, scrolling through her phone. The apartment is a disaster. Dishes heaped in the sink from at least 3 days ago, garbage overflowing, and the laundry I requested her to quickly throw in the washer still sitting in the hamper. But, whatever. I'm too tired to fight about this. I placed the gas station meal on the coffee table and mumbled something about dinner. Skylar looks up from her phone, looks at the food and exclaims, "Wow, you really know how to make poverty taste worse." I freeze. I actually can't move. Did she really just say that? After I just paid our rent? What happens after I work a 12-hour shift? After she made exactly 0 contributions to our household today? Before I can react, she swings her arm across the coffee table, knocking the food on the floor. The soda explodes on our carpet. "Try again tomorrow, idiot." That's when something inside of me clicked, as if you've been attempting to solve a jigsaw and suddenly all of the parts fall into place, revealing the entire picture. I've been married for 4 years but have never been a husband. I am a wallet with a pulse. I've always paid for everything. Initially it was because Skylar was between jobs. Then it was because she was discovering her passion. Then it was because the job market was extremely competitive. Then it was because she was experiencing burnout. The justifications changed, but the fact remained the same. My paycheck came in, nothing went out. Meanwhile, her own spending has continued unabated. New clothing, expensive skincare, constant meal delivery, because cooking is so draining. Every time I mention it, I'm the bad guy. I am financially abusive for questioning where our money is going. I'm controlling for proposing a budget. I am unsupportive for asking why she needs another $300 pair of shoes. Standing there, watching the drink seep into our carpet, which I will undoubtedly clean, something in me died. Or maybe you woke up. I do not know. I did not yell. I did not argue. I simply turned around, walked outside, got into my car, and drove away. She was left sitting there with her phone, attitude, and mess. I drove aimlessly for a bit and ended up in this parking lot, writing this post on my phone since I literally had no one to talk to about it. Skylar made certain of that over the years. My pals were losers, and my family was toxic. It's funny how everyone who could have had my back became problematic. My phone has been blowing up for the last hour. Text after text, first angry. Where TF are you? Then manipulative. I'm scared. Please come home. Then gaslighting. You're overreacting. It was just a joke. And now the sobbing apologies. I'm so sorry, baby. Please come home. I didn't mean it. I have not replied to any of them. Instead, I've been doing mathematics. Cold, hard mathematics. Over the last 4 years, I've spent around $192,000 on our living expenses, bills, and her personal spending. In exchange, she has contributed almost $18,000 over the brief time she worked. And that's just the financial aspect. I won't even talk about the emotional labor, the housework I do despite working full-time, the continual walking on eggshells, the friends I've lost, the family events I've missed, and the dreams I've put on hold. I guess I've been in denial for 4 years, convincing myself that things will improve once she found the appropriate job. We had more money, and she was less stressed. When? But tonight, witnessing her throw perfectly fine food out while calling me an idiot, I realize the truth. There's no when. This is it. This is who she is. This describes who we are. Alternatively, this is who we were. I'm done being a walking ATM. Tomorrow, I'll open a new bank account with a different bank. I'm going to divert my direct deposit. I'm going to phone a lawyer. And I'm going to figure out what divorce looks like after 4 years of providing someone's financial support. I'm not sure what she will do when the money runs out. Probably call her parents, who are reputed to be nasty, but she has no problem accepting their birthday checks. Maybe she should obtain a real job or find another sucker to pay for her lifestyle. Not my concern anymore. So, that's where I am at. I'm sitting in my car at almost 3 a.m., plotting my departure strategy from a marriage that I'm quite sure has been one-sided since the beginning. Surprisingly, I feel relieved. It feels like I can breathe for the first time in years. Has anyone else experienced something similar? Any suggestions on how to preserve my finances throughout a divorce? Because something tells me that when Skylar discovers her meal ticket is being walked out the door, things will become ugly quickly. Update 1. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who supported my previous post. Waking up to hundreds of responses from folks who have been where I am was both uplifting and disheartening. Validating because I am not insane. Depressing, because there appear to be thousands of us walking ATMs out there. It's been 16 days since the gas station supper incident. 16 days of what I can only describe as financial warfare using spreadsheets instead of firearms. The morning after I wrote, I went straight to a credit union across town to create fresh accounts. The lady behind the desk continued giving me anxious looks as I stammered through my explanation of why I wanted accounts that my wife couldn't access. When I eventually stopped speaking, she simply slid a form over the desk and stated she'd seen it before. There is no judgment. There are no questions. It's just efficiency. That's when it dawned on me. This happens so frequently that they have a protocol. I redirected my direct deposit, which thankfully would not arrive until the next pay week. We left just enough money in our joint account to satisfy our immediate expenses. Then I spent 3 days creating spreadsheets, not just simple finances. I conducted a thorough forensic accounting on our marriage. 4 years of transactions organized into categories, with brief notes on what each was for. The findings were illuminating. Skylar had spent $11,642 in the last year alone on clothes, makeup, and what I generously classed as personal items. That's nearly $1,000 per month, on stuff, while I worked overtime and ate noodles for lunch to make ends meet. And the ends were not even meeting. We had $8,300 in credit card debt, which I was unaware of until I went through all of our accounts. It turns out that those forgot to pay instances applied to much more than just rent. I printed everything color-coded and with small sticky tabs. Because if I was going to end my marriage, I was going to do it with well-organized evidence. For the record, witnessing 4 years of financial abuse put out in Excel has strange psychological effects. I alternated between wanting to vomit and high-five myself for finally recognizing the reality. Skylar had changed dramatically by the time I returned home 3 days later. The apartment was spotless. She had prepared my favorite supper. She'd even put on her pricey cosmetics, which she saves for special occasions. The manipulation was so clear it was almost endearing. Imagine witnessing a toddler lie about eating cookies as their face is smeared with chocolate. I sat down at our kitchen table, set my binder of financial documents between us, and began chatting. Calmly. I explained that I was aware of my credit card debt, that I had misdirected my paycheck, that I had determined exactly how much of our joint expenses I would cover going forward, and how much she would have to contribute. For the first 30 seconds, she just stared, as if her brain couldn't comprehend the reality that I was actually sticking up for myself. Then came the waterworks. Then come the accusations. Then the promises of transformation. The typical manipulation trifecta. I'd seen it so many times that it almost seemed scripted. But this time, I did not fold. This time, I had my binder of truth and enough righteous rage to power a small city. When she realized that crying wasn't working, she changed tactics. She began to mention how her friend Lindsay had recently gone through a difficult time with her spouse, and had successfully resolved it. How marriage is about supporting one another during difficult times. If she got a job tomorrow, I'd be thrilled. I just turned to page 23 of my binder. The document has all of her past promises to find a job, properly dated and categorized by excuse. That's when things became ugly. She called me every single name in the book. Said I was financially abusing her by controlling the money. Said I'd always been cheap and weak. She claimed she only stayed with me out of pity. And you know what? The craziest part was that having her say all of it out loud made me feel better. As if she was finally being truthful for the first time in our marriage. That night, I moved into the extra room. Set up what my buddy Lawson refers to as a depression nest, consisting of a mattress on the floor, my laptop, and enough clothes to get by. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night without waking up worried about finances. The following week felt like I was living with a stranger, who was changing personas to see which one would work best for me. One day, she'd be nice and sorry, preparing coffee, and inquiring about my day. The next moment, she'd be cold and aloof, slamming doors and moaning deeply. Then she'd be realistic, sitting down with job search websites and asking for my assistance with her resume. I remained nice, yet detached. Answered direct questions briefly. I didn't take the bait when she tried to start a fight. Gray rocking is a term used on the internet to describe when someone becomes so uninteresting and inattentive that they lose interest in attempting to persuade you. It turns out that it works. But the major changes began when the money ran out. Roughly a week after I rerouted my salary. Her credit card was denied while trying to purchase delivery. I was in the guest room, but I could hear her on the phone, trying several cards and becoming increasingly irritated. The next day, she attempted to buy something online and allegedly had the same problem. That afternoon, I received a calendar warning that our auto insurance was due, something she had usually handled with our combined funds. Except today, there was insufficient funds in that account. Reality was setting in, one denied transaction at a time. She confronted me in the kitchen 2 nights ago, wanting to know what I had done. I calmly stated that I was now covering exactly 50% of our combined expenses, including rent, utilities, groceries, and car insurance. Nothing more. Nothing less. If she wanted to spend money, she would have to contribute. For a moment I thought she was going to hit me. Her expressions ranged from astonishment and bewilderment to fury, calculating, and eventually defeat. All in roughly 15 seconds. Yesterday morning I awoke to find a message on the kitchen countertop. She planned to spend a few days with her friend Cheryl, to think about things. She packed her laptop, makeup and enough clothing for a week. And you know what? Somehow the apartment feels larger. Her wrath and entitlement had taken up physical space that I could now breathe in. I am not naive enough to believe this is over. Skylar is not the sort to relinquish her meal ticket without a fight. But for the first time in our marriage, I'm not frightened to argue. I have my binder. I've got separate accounts. Most importantly, I've received confirmation that I'm not insane for expecting an adult to behave like an adult. My lawyer, a straight-talking woman who reminds me of my no-nonsense aunt, believes I'm in a fortunate situation. We are tenants. No children. While having mutual debt is unfortunate, we do not own property together. She is drafting separation documents that will divide our debts proportionally based on who accumulated them. which means Skylar is going to discover that all those spa days and stuff were not free. I should be sad. This is the end of my marriage after all. But basically, I feel like I've been lugging a bag full of rocks for 4 years, and I've finally put it down. My shoulders feel lighter. Cheryl messaged me this morning. Skylar wants to meet and work things out. It appears she has been crying non-stop and is aware of what she has done. I agreed to meet her tomorrow at a coffee shop, neutral ground where she couldn't throw something, like my meal, or yell without humiliating herself. I have a feeling this will be the performance of a lifetime. Oscar-worthy tears, promises of change, perhaps even some strategic cleavage. But this time, I'm going in with fresh eyes and an exit strategy. Update 2. Well, it occurred. She ordered a $12 latte. Skylar's decision to spend $12 on a premium coffee while lamenting about her financial situation characterized our relationship perfectly. The coffee shop meeting went just as I expected. She arrived looking as if she had just come off the set of a sad music video. Slightly smudged mascara, stylishly disheveled hair, and that blue sweater, which I once remarked brought out her eyes. The manipulation was so clear that it was nearly impressive. For 2 hours straight, she went through her best hits. Tears, promises, guilt trips, and, when all else failed, cryptic hints about how beautiful her coworker Gage finds her. Everything was deliberately planned to make me feel like a hero capable of saving her, or a villain intent on wrecking her life. 4 years ago, it would have worked. Hell, 4 weeks ago, that could have worked. But sitting across from her, with my lawyer's counsel fresh in my memory and 16 days of uninterrupted sleep under my belt, all I saw was a con artist, whose favorite victim had finally figured out the game. I passed the separation agreement across the table. I gave her 2 options: sign it and handle it like adults, or fight me and waste her remaining money on legal bills. The agreement was more than fair. I even volunteered to take on 60% of our joint credit card debt, despite the fact that my spreadsheets plainly show she is responsible for the majority of it. She did not even read it. Just pushed it aside and said we could work it out if I stopped being so petty about money. Classic Skylar, treating a financial nuclear bomb as if it were a little quarrel about which TV to watch. I left her sitting there, still talking about how we could start fresh. I walked out mid-sentence. I felt like I was in a movie. Except there was no dramatic music. Just the awkward shuffle of coffee shop patrons trying not to stare at the crying woman. It was 37 days ago. Since then, things have been chaotic, but better. It's like I've been recovering from a 4-year relationship addiction. The first few weeks were difficult. Nightmares, second-guessing myself, gazing at my phone, wondering if I should just call and say I'd changed my mind. But then, unexpectedly, Cheryl reached out to me. Skylar's friend turned out to be less supportive than she had imagined. Cheryl began asking questions after 2 weeks of listening to Skylar's version of events, and witnessing her consume Cheryl's food and hospitality without contributing. Then she began to notice irregularities. Then she looked me up on social media and messaged me. We met for coffee. I got a regular drip, $5. Because I'm still healing the financial damage from my marriage. Cheryl shyly acknowledged that Skylar had been badmouthing me to everyone for years, portraying herself as a long-suffering wife supporting her failing husband through career struggles. This was the polar opposite of reality. But what is the best part? Cheryl had receipts, screenshots of Skylar talking in their group chat about how she trained me to pay all the bills, while she retained her own money. Pictures of buying sprees with the phrase, "Hubby doesn't know LOL." Text messages whining about having to pretend to look for work, simply to get me off her back. My 4-year marriage, explained in poisoned texts. I did not even feel angry, just got validated. It was like finally obtaining proof that I wasn't going insane. Cheryl apologized for trusting Skylar's falsehoods, said she recognized warning signs but ignored them since Skylar was so convincing. Then she did something unexpected. She promised to be a witness if the divorce turned ugly. She said she couldn't stand by and let someone be used like that. It turns out that not everyone has a damaged moral compass like my soon-to-be ex-wife. Speaking of Skylar, reality struck her like a freight train around 3 weeks after our coffee shop rendezvous. Her credit cards were maxed out. Her parents, who, I subsequently discovered, were not the monsters she claimed, but rather ordinary people tired of supporting her lifestyle, refused to send further money. Cheryl had instructed her to start paying rent, or find another place to stay. That was when the phone calls began. 3, 4, or 5 times per day. Voicemails alternate between crying apologies and nasty threats. The texts ranged from, "I miss you so much, baby," to, "You're going to die alone and miserable." The emotional whiplash was taxing. But my attorney had prepped me. Document everything. Respond modestly. Never engage with the insane. So that is what I did. Then came the day I had been quietly dreading. Relocation day. I had found a little studio apartment across town. Nothing extravagant, but it's clean, has good water pressure, and, most significantly, my name is the only one on the lease. I made arrangements to pick up my belongings while Skylar was supposed to be at a job interview, her first in months, that happened to be scheduled just when rent was due. However, she was not at an interview. She was waiting in the flat, sitting on the couch like the last boss in a video game I'd never play. For some strange reason, I almost laughed. Of course, she would ambush me. Of course, she'd make things tougher than they needed to be. Of course, she was wearing her blue sweater again. My friend Holden, who came to assist me move, tightened up alongside me right away. He'd heard all of the stories, but now he was experiencing the Skylar show live for the first time. The following 2 hours were the most uncomfortable of my life. Skylar alternated between helping pack dishes, strange, and accidentally dumping items I cared about, predictable. Making small chat with Holden, as if we were all pals hanging out, very uncomfortable. Asking pointed inquiries about my new surroundings, which I purposefully kept vague. I was waiting for the explosion the entire time, the yelling, the throwing of objects, the theatrical announcements. But it never arrived. Instead, when I finished the last box, she handed me an envelope and explained that she had been thinking a lot. Inside was the signed separation agreement. There are no modifications. There is no negotiation. Only her signature appeared on each highlighted line. I stood there, staring at it as if it would explode in my hands. After weeks of arguing, she finally conceded. It didn't make sense. That night, while I sat on my new mattress on the floor of my empty studio, reminiscing about my depressive nest in the spare room, Cheryl texted me an explanation. Skylar apparently met a guy at a bar. Some guy with a nice watch and a fancy car believed her stories about her controlling ex were quite sympathetic. Some guy had previously volunteered to let her stay at his apartment until she could get back on her feet. She had found herself a new ATM. And it became clear that divorcing me as soon as possible was best for her. I should have felt relieved, and a part of me did. But another part of me felt a strange urge to warn the poor man. I want to show him my spreadsheets and screenshots, to protect him from what I had just escaped. I didn't, however. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way. The weeks following have been strangely normal. I go to work. I return home to my little but neat studio. I'm progressively developing my emergency money, which is now up to $1,012. I'm learning to cook beyond my basic bachelor's skills. I installed a budgeting program that does not make me want to throw my phone across the room. The divorce was finalized last week. There's no drama, no court appearance, just paperwork, and a strange dreamlike emptiness when I saw the word dissolved imprinted on what had once been my most significant commitment. I wish I could conclude with some deep wisdom, but the reality is, I am still processing. I still find myself reaching for my phone to text her about anything humorous. I'm still waking up confused when I don't feel her on the other side of the bed. Habits formed over 4 years do not disappear overnight. But I'm also rediscovering aspects of myself that have been dormant for years. I rejoined my old gaming group. I'm talking with my sister again. I purchased concert tickets without considering how many ramen dinners I would need to cover the cost.